Hello everybody and welcome to another one of my speculation videos. Today there's a couple things I wanted to talk about specifically around Final Fantasy X-3. The two things I want to talk about is whether or not I think it will happen and then why I feel like it absolutely has to happen. So those are the two main things I want to focus on today, and I want to start off by talking about what are the odds of this happening. And I think the first thing that people might be thinking is, Michael, why do you think Final Fantasy X-3 is going to happen? Because Final Fantasy X-2 was actually released about 14 years ago. The game originally came out in 2003, so there actually hasn't been a new game in the Final Fantasy X series in 14 years. And I get that, but there's a couple things I'd like to point out. And the first thing I want to point out is that they actually did release an HD remake, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that came out on the PlayStation 4 in the year 2013. So that was only 4 years ago. And it wasn't just like re-released content, they also released a couple new things. There was a novella called Final Fantasy X 2.5, and then they released an audio drama called Final Fantasy X Will, which I have a lot of problems with that audio drama, but we'll get to that in the next section of this video. So even though it was 14 years since X-2 was originally released, they have been releasing a little bit of content in the Final Fantasy X universe over the past few years. So it's been about 4 years since anything new has happened, but it was only 4 years ago that they did release something related to Final Fantasy X. And I would also like to point out that there was another Final Fantasy game that was talked about a long time ago that took a long time to get released, and that's a game called Final Fantasy Versus 13. So if you're a pretty big Final Fantasy fan, you might know what Final Fantasy Versus 13 is. If you're not, don't worry, because I know you've heard of this game. It was announced in 2006, but it wasn't released until the year 2016 under the name of Final Fantasy 15. So this game that was announced at this point 11 years ago took a decade to get released. So when you talk about Final Fantasy and Square Enix, a lot of times the projects and the series that they do take a very long time to actually come to fruition. So if you're to sit there and say, Michael, it's been 14 years since they've released X-2, why would they release a new game in that trilogy? My response would be, Final Fantasy does things like that all the time. That is something Square Enix constantly does, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. So they do tend to take a while for their series. And it wasn't too long ago, it was actually back toward the end of 2016, that they actually did an interview, I'll put the quote on the screen, where they essentially said if there's a demand for Final Fantasy X-3 to come out, it's something that they would definitely consider doing. So I have a message for you all to send as many letters as you can to Square Enix that they have to release this game, because they need to. I think there is a couple of caveats that we have to consider. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a big project that they're working on at the moment that probably won't be released until 2018, and they're also working on the HD remake of Final Fantasy VII, and so I'm willing to bet those two projects are probably going to have to be completed and released until we hear any news about any more big projects. And so even if Final Fantasy X-3 is something they're thinking about at the moment, we will not hear about it until at the earliest 2018. So even though I'm making this, I don't expect any news about it to happen in a long time, so this is just early speculation. So right now, I'm about 50-50 on whether or not I think it's going to happen. I do think it depends on demand and stuff, but we'll see how that goes. So that is how I feel about the odds of the game coming out. And a lot of you are probably wondering, do you even need a Final Fantasy X-3? And my answer to that question is absolutely yes. And the reason I say yes is because of the audio drama called Final Fantasy X Will. But before I get into that, the ending of Final Fantasy X-2, if you're not aware, and again, I did mention at the beginning of the video, there will be spoilers in this, so be aware of that. In Final Fantasy X-2, if you get the 100% ending, you essentially see Tidus and Yuna get completely reunited. They embrace, they hug each other, they kiss, and then they talk about how they're reunited, and they don't know if it'll last forever, because again, whether or not Tidus is there depends on their faith, but he wants to be with Yuna and enjoy his time as long as he wants. And they defeated Vegnagun, Sin was killed, the political problems that they were having with the new Yevon and the Youth League, everything was settled down. So it felt like everything in that world was pretty much at peace. And so if it ended there, I probably would have said, I don't really need a Final Fantasy X-3. I would have played it because I love these characters and they're all so endearing and awesome, but it didn't really feel like it was necessary. However, in 2013, they released that audio drama that I've been alluding to called Final Fantasy X Will. And I am not exaggerating. This is where like I get totally biased and want to go on a rant. That audio drama completely ruined Final Fantasy X for me. The worst part about it is it's canon, so everything I'm about to say is canon. I'm going to give a short summary about it. I'm not going to go too into detail. If that's something you guys want to see, I can make another separate video talking about that thing completely, but that'll be for a different day, if that's something people are interested in. The way the audio drama works is it centers on two characters named Chuami and Kurgum. This is their first appearance. They were never in either of the games. They meet Tidus, who's injured. That'll be important later. They go talk to Yuna about some unrest that's going on in the Farplane, that some people are returning to the Farplane and there's a lot more activity than usual. So Yuna essentially accompanies them to go see the Farplane. long story short, a lot of weird stuff is going on that's bad, and they end up finding out that Sin has actually returned. So someone actually beckoned for Sin to come back, and it happened.
What we saw that day at the Moonflow wasn't just an omen. It was a clear sign of the return. The return of what is now right before my eyes. Sin.
Which kind of makes me sad. I was kind of hoping Sin would stay dead. The whole first game was this beautiful journey about breaking the cycle that Sin constantly had to keep coming back, and they were talking about false hope and how they were giving people false hope by getting rid of Sin only for him to return. So it was really cool that they found a way to permanently defeat Sin, so the fact that he came back was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. That kind of made me sad, but I was like, whatever. I kind of expected it, so I wasn't too upset. And so now I'm like, okay, well now I can see what 10-3 would be about. If they did decide to make a 10-3, it would probably be about them having to defeat Sin again once and for all. But that's not where the audio drama ended. So after this, Yuna goes back. I believe she went to Bavel. I don't actually know where Tidus was. That's not important. And she has a secret conversation with Tidus, and Chuami, who's kind of a snobby character, listens in and eavesdrops. And the conversation was not about Tidus' injury. It was not about Sin returning, at least the part that we heard. The conversation was centered on Tidus having a friend named Marfi. This was a girl that he was hanging out with, and Yuna was essentially just jealous. And she kept saying, is she really just a friend? And Tidus was like, I swear, we just hang out, we're just friends, it's nothing more. And the whole time I'm like, really, this is a conversation they're having? But I was like, okay, but Yuna's been jealous before. We had the cute little scene where in Final Fantasy X-2 when she thought Tidus was with a girl named Len and she was all super jealous of that.
Why am I so mad? Who the heck is Len?
So that's not unlike Yuna. The problem with this scene was that at the end of it, Yuna tells Tidus she's actually in love with someone else. And so now she's like, okay, we need to go our separate ways. I don't think this is working out. And she leaves him.
I'm no longer looking at you.
What?
I think I'm in love with someone else.
Who?
Someone you don't know.
Let me meet him then.
I'm sorry.
And that's it. That's how this ends. And then Chuami and Kurgum essentially have their own breakup, even though they're just like childhood friends or whatever. It's weird. But can I just sit there and say that all the work, I personally played Final Fantasy X and X-2 about like 200-300 hours total. Went on this beautiful journey with them where they sacrifice for each other. Yuna spends a lot of time in Final Fantasy X-2 trying to bring him back and see him just one more time. And this is how it ends. Really? That's how you're going to choose to end it? Because that's pretty much where the audio drama ends. They go their separate ways. Tidus goes back and says, I need to get her back. And then Yuna goes and essentially tells a crowd of people that she will defeat Sin again. So that's how the audio drama ends. And it sucks. So, just to quickly summarize the points again, Sin came back. So we do have an enemy in Final Fantasy X-3 that can be the focal point of the game. We can just have essentially another duel with Sin to shut him down once and for all. And I need to have closure, because Yuna breaking up with Tidus, saying she fell in love with some person that Tidus doesn't know, is not closure. That is not how this franchise can end. And Chuami and Kurgum, I just briefly talked about them, but they both seem like cool characters. I kind of love snotty characters like Chuami. She's just a 17-year-old girl that I kind of found funny the whole time. And then Kurgum is this kind of, he seems like just a sweet kind of, I don't know if he's a child or if he's an adult. They didn't really say the ages of him, but he seemed like a cool character too that really cared about Lady Yuna and wanted to work with her and all that. So they seem like endearing characters that can be the main protagonists in the third game next to Tidus and Yuna on their journey to defeat Sin. So it feels like the game has a plot. And the way that Final Fantasy X will ended with Yuna and Tidus breaking up is not how this story can end. Again, with all the work that they went through to fight for each other and to get back with each other, that can't be how it ends. I mean, there has to be a better ending to the story than that, and I refuse to believe that Square Enix actually thinks that's a good idea. Because I do have my own theory. Again, I don't want to talk about it here. If we want to make a separate video for that, I can. My theory is that Yuna doesn't actually mean what she says. I think she wanted to go defeat Sin without Tidus, and just made up the story about her being in love with someone else to sort of scare Tidus away, so she can protect him. So he doesn't have to fight Sin again and risk his life for her again. That's my thinking. And I don't know if that's true, and that's the problem, is I'll never know if that's true. So I'm stuck here thinking, well, is Yuna just a shallow jerk that broke up with Tidus because she was kind of jealous? Or does she actually care about him and want to protect him? Right? I don't know. I'd like to believe she's the protector. That's what she's been the whole series, but I don't know. And that's going to bother me forever, because she's one of my favorite video game protagonists, and it will bother me to no end if I can't get closure on this. So, at this point, Final Fantasy X-3 has to be a thing now. Before I was kind of like, well, if it happens, it'd be cool. If it doesn't happen, whatever. But now I am absolutely convinced that if this doesn't happen, it would be an absolute tragedy. So that's pretty much where I think I'm going to end this video now. I don't have too much more to say than that. It has to happen. We have a main enemy. We have Sin to defeat. We have a plot that we need to figure out. We have 2 additional new characters in Chuomi and Kurgum that I think would be really cool to sort of lead the pack behind Tidus and Yuna. There's a plot there for this game. Like I said, if it does happen, it won't happen for a while. I wouldn't expect anything until 2018 or even 2019, maybe at E3 in either of those years. It's going to be a long time away, but it's something that I feel like has to happen. I need this franchise to have an actual good ending. 10-3, if it does happen, should be the ending, and just give me an ending where Tidus and Yuna can live happily ever after. Let them get married, have a child, settle down, let Spira end in peace. Let's stop having these weird endings to these games. That's what I want. So that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about Final Fantasy X, and if you guys want to see a 10-3. If you haven't heard the audio drama yet, I would recommend listening to it, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. It sucks, and I don't like it. But it gives you a better idea of how Square Enix ended the story and why I feel like there needs to be a 10-3. If you have heard the audio drama, let me know what you think of it, if you feel like this needs to happen, and what the odds are that you think Final Fantasy X-3 will be announced in the next couple of years. So with that said, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.